Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from today. We'd like to welcome you and thank you for attending today's webinar, Amplifying Human Ingenuity with Intelligent Technology. Before we get started, we'd like to review a little bit of housekeeping. There's a Q&A box on the webinar console for you to use. Please feel free to enter any content or technical questions you have into the window, and we will address those as they come in real time. Today we have Azure technical experts and subject matter experts with us who will be able to answer those questions as you pop them into that Q&A box. This webinar is being recorded, and you will be sent a link after the presentation to the email that you registered with. In addition, at the top right hand of your console, you're going to see some resources that we provided for you that we think you might find helpful related to today's topic. We will be doing some live demos today. During these demos, if you find that you lose the webinar feed, please try refreshing your browser, as this often corrects the problem. So I'm going to get started by introducing today's speakers, Gianpaolo Battiaga and Luis Cabrera, both from Microsoft. And I'm so sorry, guys, if I didn't say your names quite right.
It's okay. So hi, everyone. My name is Gianpaolo Battaglia. I'm working in the marketing team of Microsoft Cognitive Services, and with me there is Luis.
Yes, I'm Luis Cabrera. I am a program manager here at Microsoft, and I own some of the cognitive services.
So the purpose of this session today is really to provide you an overview about what is Microsoft AI, how Microsoft positions itself in this AI space, what are the different services, and we're going to double-click through that around the Microsoft Cognitive Services. So, of course, it's a webinar, but the purpose is to interact with you. You've got the opportunity to ask questions. We've got lots of demonstrations as well, so I hope you enjoy it. So, Luis?
Yeah, so let's start with a story. So when I was a kid, I was learning to use MS-DOS, and you know how I did it? I had to go and borrow a book from my dad. I had to read the book, and I learned to navigate the system. And that experience kind of stuck with me because it took quite a bit of effort to learn to use the machine. About 10 years ago, I noticed a pattern that started to change. Computers started becoming easier to use. At the time, I was working in the Microsoft Surface, the big tabletop computer at the time. These are my kids. And it was interesting because using a machine was a little bit more discoverable. There was a little bit more connection to natural actions that we perform. But it was still us as humans that had to learn to use the machine. But what if machines could be the ones to interact with us? Instead of us learning to use the technology, what if it was the machines who had to learn us, right? What if they could understand language? What if they could understand context? And even predict, maybe based on the way that you look, how you feel, or what you have said in the past, and provide feedback or answers appropriately, right? So we're at a very exciting time right now, Gianpaolo, where we can start to kind of switch the way that we use machines.
And by time, I like this point, Luis, is that we're exactly at the convergence of three main trends. Some of them started a little bit of time ago, but we're at the exact sweet moment in which we've got these three main moments which are happening in the same time. On one side, the data. Like, if you we have, analysts and reports which are indicating that the volume of the data is doubling every 18 months. And I think that now, I read that at least a year ago, and I think it's even 16 months. But like, just look at your own smartphones you have and see how many pictures you're having more and more day after day after day. All the things that you're receiving, like the data is exploding in our individual devices, and in the world, it's doubling like at a pace which become more and more frequent. The second aspect is the ability for machines to process these capabilities, to process all this data. We had initially on-premises servers in specific places in our own enterprises, and then we had the cloud, the ability to scale, to process all this huge amount of data with this elasticity, because we're enabling enterprises and people to put the cursor wherever they want in order to know what they want to process. And the last layer, and this is what we're going to talk about, all these algorithms. Microsoft started 25 years ago Microsoft Research, and 20 years ago you had already Hotmail, which was like one of the email services. And I think that 20 years minus one day you had maybe the first spam. And at that time you had already the question from these researchers about how can you identify that this email is a spam or not a spam. And at the time there was already deep intense statistics, data mining, which became then data science, machine learning, and a little bit of AI on premises. What happened is that in 2 decades, we've been able to work on these algorithms, and on top of putting them into our product, we're providing them also to enterprises to use them on the go without the need to be an expert in data science. And this is where now, today, is a perfect time because we're going in these breakthrough enabling intelligence capabilities. And so this is why, from Microsoft point of view, we're really working on enabling AI not only for consumers with the products you can use as individual users, but also for enterprises, and how we're providing all the tools from machine learning to deep learning to cognitive capabilities, and sometimes we have the need to be an expert in data science because we created the models and trained them on the go. So, and this goes into this sentence about what's in our DNA when we think about artificial intelligence, amplifying human ingenuity with intelligent technology. This is where we're going to have tools and services for any user, sometimes even without noticing that there is AI behind the scenes, but helping people to be empowered to do more, to work in a better way, to use these smart tools. So AI and Microsoft AI, you can think about 4 different pillars, and we're going to go through each of them. Intelligent agent, applications, AI solutions, and the platform. So the first one is related to the intelligent agent, which is Cortana. Think about the personal digital assistant which knows you. You can have it on your machine, even on any kind of phone. And think about this deep personal digital assistant which can help you to do more. Sometimes you can even have now sending an email saying that you're going to send this presentation end of week, and even Cortana saying, hey, you said that you were going to send it, I didn't see that you sent it, so please do that. So having this kind of deep personal digital assistants which are going to follow you and your habits to help you to do more.
Yeah, Gianpaolo, I think that's great. Just like your Outlook is getting smarter, right? And this brings us to the next pillar, which is applications that we are creating ourselves are getting smarter. We're using these machine learning capabilities. Think of dynamics. Let's say you are dealing with a customer base and you want to more quickly identify how to solve a customer issue, right? Or what are the products that a customer is most likely to want to purchase. So we have several of these examples of applications that are getting smarter, but one that we want to show you today is Presentation Translator. This is a garage project. It's a plugin into PowerPoint that uses some of our cognitive service capabilities. We will be talking a little bit about those capabilities, but let's get out of the slide mode and actually show people how we may enable something like that. So right now we're showing what you as the presenter will see, right?
So this is the PowerPoint presentation we're currently running on, and so I'm opening, and this is like what you can see. You've got these add-ins which can be provided, and I'm just going to do the presentation directly starting subtitles.
Very good.
And when I click here, you'll see that the console is coming and even asking, okay, in what language you want to speak? And here I'm going to write English, and I'm going to start subtitles.
Okay.
So technically here you should see the presentation starting, and hopefully some transcription which is automatically appearing, even if I've got a horrible French accent while I'm speaking.
Hey Gianpaolo, what if you were giving the presentation in French?
So it can be a possibility, so let me show you that.
We passed out for coming back down, and I can see the lower trail that I just walked on. That big of a loop.
The subtitles, one moment. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to click again on Start Subtitles, and you can identify that you can do all the different languages. So I'm going to select French, which has got a French accent, and I've got also English.
I think there is a little bit of echo.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're going to mute people, but at the same time I'm going to start the subtitles from French to English. Identify that. Maintenant, je vais commencer à essayer à parler en français. Et normalement, avec un petit peu de chance, nous allons avoir la traduction instantanée du français à l'anglais. Et la chose la plus importante à dire pour un Français qui habite aux États-Unis depuis 2 ans, c'est qu'il est très difficile de trouver un très bon café français.
Wow. Nice.
So, one thing I wanted to show you as well, that I'm going to stop the subtitles because I'm going to speak in English. You cannot see it anymore. So, when you start subtitles, like that, English to English, you see that you've got a QR code which is appearing here, and technically everyone in the audience would be able to use the phone to have the QR code and see directly up to 500 different devices the transcription of what I'm saying directly in English, and you could be able also to select the language and see the automatic translation into another language. So huge capabilities, and this is already an example of how we're able to use cognitive capabilities and cognitive services into something as what we could use as a productivity tool like PowerPoint with speech-to-text and translation. So let me stop sharing, and let's go back to the slides now. 1 second. I hope you can see the slides.
So while they are coming up, the next pillar that we would like to discuss is that we actually have solutions that we can use if you want to create your own applications, right? Ultimately, it's not just about Microsoft creating interesting or smart applications or agents, but it's really about how do we enable the developer community to create things like this, right?
So stitching all the pieces together, right?
That is correct. So actually, if we can share the screen again, let's navigate to the gallery.
1 second.
Okay, so we have this gallery of solutions. All right.
So you should see, I hope you can see my screen. I'm currently sharing. There might be a little bit of lag.
Hit screen share again.
So I will share again, just a second. Screen sharing.
It's
So you should see it.
It's coming, I think.
Perfect.
All right, perfect. So this is actually the gallery of solutions that we have, and if you, let's click see all here, and you can see a variety, right? So if you scroll down, you can see many of them. We can, let's say, take the interactive voice response bot. We may be interested in building something like that. And if I were to click deploy, I'm not going to click it right now, it will actually instantiate a full architecture that uses some of these capabilities with infrastructure components. As a matter of fact, I'm going to scroll down here, and we can see a full architecture that will deploy. It will deploy some Azure SQL, some of the cognitive services like the language understanding service, Bing speech. It will connect it to the bot framework and so forth. So you can see this big architecture, and so it's a good way to kind of get started creating some of these solutions.
So the question I had, Luis, is that, and it's more a comment, sometimes, going back to the presentation again, it's kind of difficult to ensure that we're able to do all the pieces by ourselves.
Yeah, that is correct, and that's why we have a partner ecosystem that can help you either start from scratch, right, or taking some of these solutions and customize them for your needs.
And so partner ecosystem being that one, especially for specific verticals from any potential industry, being able to rely on the partners to stitch the pieces. And the last one, which is kind of interesting into these AI solutions, is related to our announcement we did at Microsoft Ignite. It was a month ago, we launched our first comprehensive end-to-end solution for bots, with virtual assistant for customers, but also having another side of the bot, just helping human agents whenever needed to have the automatic way to escalate from a question from a customer to a bot and then to a human agent, and also being able to have all behind the scenes the capabilities to process the language and have a dashboard to see how to better work for customer service. So the first one being that.
That is correct.
And so going on the fourth pillar, and this is where we're going to double click a little bit more, the platform, Luis.
Yeah, so ultimately we want to provide all the building blocks, all the Lego pieces necessary to create this and to enable you to do that. And it's, you can think of it as a set of different layers that vary in kind of abstraction, right? So at the very bottom we have kind of raw infrastructure. Think of all the compute and big data capabilities, right? Then after that we have a layer of machine learning capabilities, products like the Machine Learning Studio, for instance, or even the cognitive toolkit that we recently released. And for instance, here in the screen right now we're seeing the Machine Learning Studio. It's a drag and drop interface that allows you to take your data, let's say split it, do training, evaluate it, do all kinds of transforms on your data. And then once you are happy with a model that you have created, you can put it in production and operationalize it as well.
But Luis, not everyone is able to make the difference between a boosted decision tree and
a neural network or something like that. Yeah, you're right. Not everyone is a data scientist, right? And that's a message that we heard clearly. And we said, what can we do for the developer community mostly, right? That says, look, I am very interested in harnessing some of these artificial intelligence capabilities, but I don't have the data science background, or maybe that's just not where I want to invest right now. I just want to solve the problem. And that's where we came up with cognitive services. Cognitive services are cloud services, microservices that they're just APIs, right? You call them, you pass some input, and you get some response. Let's actually talk about them in more detail. Let's go through what they have.
So, as we've mentioned, think about cognitive services as a collection of 30 different APIs and services which are helping you to infuse the ability for the systems to hear, see, understand, map specific knowledge components, even perform intelligent search without the need to be an expert in data science, because we created the system, we train the system to be more and more accurate, and we provide them sometimes as a simple API call to be put into any kind of application. So as mentioned, we've got a set of 30 different APIs and services, and we're going to go into the various categories right now. So you can see on the screen vision, so think about the ability to understand what's inside an image, the people, also analyze smart insights into videos. Speech, second layer, speech capabilities, so think about speech to text, text to speech, recognizing who is speaking and being able to create even your own custom speech service, and I'm going to explain a little bit more this customization layer in 1 second. Language capabilities, so understanding language, basically in what language you're currently typing, what's the sentiment of specific sentences, what is the intent of a sentence I'm currently typing. Knowledge capabilities, so how I'm able to find pattern into complex data. How am I going to work on building a knowledge base of all my various documents and data I can have within my organization. Search capabilities, so this is where I'm going to use Bing as search browser in order to be able to perform smart search, which can be image search, searching into the news, into specific videos, even into the web, and having the ability to have these auto-suggest capabilities. And the last layer is related to labs. Think about that as very early experimental capabilities. One of them, called Project Frag, is even able with specific cameras to recognize gestures you're performing in front of it. And so I talked about customization. A couple of months ago at Microsoft Build Conference, I think it's now 6 months ago, we launched all these new capabilities because sometimes we're not only trying to just put an image and have an insight. I'd like, as a customer or as an enterprise, to provide my own images and to have my own specific classifiers because I'm working on fruits, for example, or what could be the way to customize the speech recognition with unique sentences and unique words that are very related to my own technical area because of my enterprise. How can I have language understanding capabilities? How can I create my own custom decision service for knowledge? How can I create search, but not on all the web, but just on the slice of the web? So we're bringing here also all these customization layers of cognitive services which are helping you to go one step further by bringing your data and training the APIs and algorithms to have your smart insights. So, Luis?
Yeah, if we were to take on the first set of cases, let's discuss about the capabilities of vision, for instance, right? So we have the ability to analyze people's faces, how old they look, what's their gender, but not just people, right? So the computer vision API, for instance, can take any image and it can tell you what it detects there, like tag it, and also even like create a caption for it. We have the ability to detect people's emotions, or even if you have a video, services like Video API or Video Indexer allow you to identify who is showing up at specific frames of the video, what are they saying, so transcription similar to what we saw on the presentation translator, and identify what are the key topics that they are talking about, right? So super interesting services, but you know, Gianpolo, the best way to actually understand some of these services is to actually do a demo. And while you're doing the screen transition here, let me tell you a real problem that I saw. I was going to the mall with my child. So my son is now about 11 years old, and he is okay. So you can see that right there. So at the mall they have all kinds of displays, right, doing all kinds of advertising, and you know, he loves Legos, right? If they have shown him Legos, then he will be absolutely interested in that and will say, let's go to that store. But the advertising today is not very smart. They instead are showing him, I don't know, Williams-Sonoma pots or you know, other kinds of clothing or whatever. And while those are very nice products, that's not what he's interested in. What if displays were like smarter and actually understood what's going on in front of them? So we have here an application that we built that if we were to say that Gianpolo is at the mall, it will realize, okay, so he's a 39-year-old man, and it looks like he really needs a cordless power drill kit, right?
How did you know that?
Yeah,
That's
you know,
exactly what I wanted.
It's artificial intelligence. What can I say? So let's say we're both here on the image, right? And it identifies that there is a group of guys, and then it will say, you know, around the corner we have Contosa restaurant, which I'm sure is your favorite type of food, Gianpolo.
Of course.
Yeah, and but what if maybe, you know, you're going there with a child, and just to do that, I am gonna take a picture of my daughter. Remember, she was playing with the Surface device.
Further.
Yeah. Okay, that should be fine.
Let me click. Give me a second.
Yeah. Okay, there we go.
So here, this is interesting. So based on the fact that it's me with Louis' child now, it's providing a very interesting recommendation about an amazing adventure playground.
She loves playgrounds.
Which
She'll
is
make you buy it.
Just $1,999. So what if the machines were not, the systems were not only able to identify what it sees, but also what I would say. So I could even think about providing comments.
Yeah. Let's see. We're using the speech API to analyze what you're saying.
I think this is very expensive.
So you see, like, it transcribed what you said, and there's a little bit of lag in the video. So, but as Gianpaolo was speaking, it was able to transcribe what he said.
Speech to text.
Speech to text, and then there is a line right below it that is what I call a happy meter, right? It's actually sentiment analysis on what you said, and that was not a very happy expression that you did. It's only 0% happiness, right?
And based on the fact that I'm currently providing a negative comment, not even doing speech to text, but text to sentiment analysis on top of that, the system was having a very basic rule saying, customer not happy for this one, try to change price, or even extracting the keyword expenses,
right.
For example.
And you can see it gives you the mini playground for 599.
Which is way better if I had a garden. So,
what if it could actually detect emotion, Gianpaolo? People don't talk in front of kiosks.
exactly, it's how they react. So, going back to the image, so I hope you'll see some frames, depending if you've got a high bandwidth or not, but it's taking frame by frame of my face in real time, and if I'm smiling, you can see that smile usually raise the emotion response to something pretty high, and if I'm super unhappy, it goes in the red zone because I feel bad or negative emotion. Where it becomes even more interesting is that it's not Luis moving the cursor up and down while I'm doing the face. It's really capturing all, and let's come Luis, come to show your happiness face. It's basically capturing all the different emotions among 8 different universal emotions which are happening on Earth, like anger, content, afraid, surprise, disgust, neutral, of course, and additional one, and being able to capture that as a face. And the most interesting part is that while you can play with the APIs for free because you always have a free tier, but you always have the ability to test all of them for a free tier and account, and you realize that when you upload an image of the face, it will provide the analysis, but not just saying you're neutral or you're positive. It's going to say I'm happy and surprised and less angry. You have all the 8 with different weights because this is the way the system is working.
That is correct.
And the one last piece I really like is the holy grail of personalization. I will stop making the system showing my face every time because it's a little bit weird to see all your emotions, but the holy grail of personalization is when the system would be able to recognize who you are. And we've got that even with the face API. We can train the system with a face, and you can tag the face, and then having face verification and identification for similarities.
Right, so to go back to our example, in that case it will not just show you something based on how old you are, but exactly who you are.
Exactly.
And maybe your previous transactions or something like that, right? That
So
was only fun.
I'm going to create directly a new face, so I'm going like I say demo, and by the way, this interface is available on GitHub, so you'll be able, I will provide the links as well as follow-up, and you'll be able to download them and play with them. And I'm going to write my name, Gianpaolo Battaglia. And the first thing it's doing is that it's looking into the web with Bing image search and finding the image. So it's me. The only thing is that it's me long time ago, and every time I do that I feel depressed. So I will use my face, but I'll use also another one. Let me add this one.
Yeah, you lost some hair there, I think.
Don't say that. So we continue here. I'm going to just train these 2 faces associated with Face API, associated with the name Gianpaolo Battaglia. I click here, and it's done. The system has been trained. So we're going to show you back now, not the kiosk, but the real-time crowd insight.
Yeah.
Just to show you how you could have
if
frame
I
by
am here,
frame.
it's just saying that I am 39 years old or 35, that I'm a male, right? So that's good. I am kind of smiling or neutral depending on when it sees me. But if you come, then it should recognize you.
So you can see here that I've been recognized around 80% depending on the light. We're using my old PC webcam, so all these parameters are taken into account because we used last time the Kinect sensor, and the age and the ability to recognize faces was extremely accurate. So then it's all parameters to take into account.
Very nice.
And here it's really taking frame by frame, and you can see that on the bottom here you've got the average crowd emotion, and you can gather all the smart insights.
Let's do sad faces and You see it dropped the red pig, right?
And
Very nice.
What's even more interesting is that you can see that all the frames already capture 88 faces, 90 faces, but still 2 unique faces. So the system was able to recognize that there are still 2 people, and one of them is Giampaolo Battaglia because we trained it.
That's correct.
So face recognition of capabilities. I'm going back to the screen for the presentation now. Just a second. I need to stop. Just need to stop sharing. That's it. So hopefully you should be able to see the screen again and all the APIs. So now, an interesting example, Uber is actually using Face API to do face recognition and verification. They're currently using it for a specific use case. You can have drivers who are driving during the day, and some of them might switch with another person to continue using the same account and still being able to make money. And this is fraud, basically. So how can we ensure that the drivers are the right drivers? And what's happening with Face API is that basically the system is going to randomly ask, oh, take a selfie, taking a selfie, and if it's the same person, it's perfect. If there is something weird, or for example a hat, the system would say, hey, I recognize the hat, because the Face API is also able to recognize mustache and glasses and things like that. And if there is any, I would say, anomaly appearing, then an operator will start calling the driver to start to go into the questions, the usual questions of screening. So one interesting use case just by using these Vision API capabilities. So now, Luis, let's talk a little bit more about language, right?
Yeah. So we have talked about vision, but then on language, it's about dealing with text, right? And we have a variety of services, being spell checker, for instance, the ability to translate again from one language to another. But I want to show you some of these services and take the opportunity to show the developer experience consuming the services. So we'll go a little bit deeper into the text analytics API.
So Luis is going to share a screen.
Yeah, and the first thing that you're going to see is the homepage for the cognitive services. More specifically, the text analytics API. And in these homepages, it has nice links on documentation, pricing, and so forth.
And this is the azure.com/cognitive site, right, Luis?
That is correct. You can get there through azure.com/cognitive, and it will give you a description of the capabilities that each of the services has as well. Now, at the very top here, it has a link to the portal, and I will go there and okay, let's make sure that you can see the portal.
So this is the Azure portal, right?
The Azure portal, right? So that's where you will sign up for these services. So let's say I'm looking for text analytics capabilities. I can click on that. It will take me to the site. It will show me the capabilities, and then I can tell it that I want to create an instance of the service. So at that point, I can start entering some fields, such as the region where I want to deploy. I can enter, like if I want to make that resource part of a group, and even select the price. So,
and we've got a free tier, right?
That is correct. I'm not going to go through that process just because it may take a little bit of time entering all that, and I already have a subscription. But you will see that once you have a subscription, you're going to get a key that will allow you to consume the service. So I just created this key for the purposes of this demo, and then if I go back to the service, you will notice this API Explorer that will allow you to play with the API and consume it. So I'm going to click there, and there I can see the capabilities. I can see the URL that I will use to request it, all the documentation about it. I can even test it. So I'm going to do some sentiment analysis, let's say.
Nice.
So,
and the API Explorer is present for all the services, right?
That is correct. It's present for all the services. So I'm just going to enter my API key here. And then it's very nice because it's instructive. It tells me like the format that is expected and so forth. I'm going to modify the request to actually have, actually language should be something like English. I'll set the ID to 1, and then some text like Gianpolo is crying because his cat died yesterday, something like that, right?
Thank you, Luis. This is very...
Yeah, it's very inspiring, right?
I don't have a cat.
You don't have a cat. Okay, that's good. So we can talk about the dead cat then. And you can see the HTTP request, so you know exactly how to compose it. You can send it to the service, and then the system will also show you the response. So in this case, the sentiment is 1.35 times 10 to the minus 5. So that's less than 1% happiness in this expression, because, you know, dead cats are always a sad story, right?
So dead cats are extremely negative, right?
Yeah. Now, you know, in reality, you will not use that with something like this. You will say, you will use maybe your customer feedback, right? So they may say something like, Microsoft Surface is awesome. I like the resolution or something, right?
Yeah.
And then if we were to send that to the system, hopefully we'll see positive sentiment. Oh, neutral. Why? Oh, come on. Let's say is amazing. I like the new resolution. It is the best in the world. You know, some world. We try to be careful. Like, for instance, if I were to say that the resolution is, if I were to say that the resolution is, I don't know, 1920 by 1080, that would be a neutral expression,
I see.
right? But in this case, I said I'm super happy or whatever, and then it's 99.4%. So this is a happy example, right?
So here we've got the ability to process text.
That is correct. Now, let's actually, there are SDKs for different languages. So if you go to the documentation here, it will actually show you how to use some of the SDKs. But I just want to show how quickly we can add some intelligence to some applications. So I created a small application. I have it here in Visual Studio, and I am going to just run it just to show you what it is. It is using Bing News search API, and that is another cognitive service where you can enter a term, let's say Seattle, and I can do a search for all the news related to Seattle, right? So now it brought back a lot of news, but let's say I just want to see how we're doing. Is Seattle very positive or very negative in the news today?
Today, yeah.
For now, for this moment, right? The news right away. And I want to color each of these with different color depending on the sentiment that they have.
Perfect.
So in that case, the first thing that I have to do, oops, sorry, I'm running the code. So I'm cheating a little bit because I kind of copied and pasted some snippets of code. But just to show you how quickly, you know, it's just a few lines of code, I can say, okay, so this instance is in the West US, let's say. I paste my code, right? Subscription key is a string, so I have to write it like that. And then I already had created like a function to get the sentiment, so I'm just gonna insert a snippet for getting the sentiment. And instead of returning null, I'm gonna return the result here, which is most of this code at the top is really just converting it from the format that I expect in the application to the format that the API takes. But really the main thing is once I do sentiment async, it will do an asynchronous call, take all my documents, and then return the result, which will be like a list of sentiments, right? And we'll do the same for key phrase extraction really quickly. I am not expecting folks to, you know, remember exactly the code. This is well documented. the key takeaway here is that it's just a few lines of code to add a lot of smarts to your application. So we did it for sentiment, we did it for key phrases. I'm going to run the application again. And now, let's see, it's running, okay. I'm going to perform the same query, Seattle, and we'll see in reality how we're doing right now in Seattle. And you can see that there is a lot of neutral content, but there is some positive, and unfortunately there is some negative. Let's say positive, city guide, the best of Seattle. You know, that's obviously positive, right? Or Seahawks agreed to deal with a veteran. So there is an agreement, I guess, so that's positive. If we were to look at the negative stuff, Seattle firefighter injured battling some fire. So that's certainly sad, and it's marked as a negative sentiment, right? So very quickly we saw how quickly it was possible to analyze sentiment, to integrate it into an application, and now you could use that with your customer feedback, for instance, right? And some examples of customers that are using this in the real world. Let's wait for the presentation to catch up to me.
Yeah, Brainshark.
Yeah, Brainshark is an example, right? So
the Brainshark story is that this company is currently working on training of salespeople to make the best sales pitch ever. And they're partnered with Microsoft with different technologies, so HoloLens on one side and of course cognitive services on the other, to measure how the pitch is currently going. And as I'm speaking, I've got face recognition, I've got emotion recognition, and even text analytics to see if what I'm currently saying is positive, and even if what I say is consistent with how I am, because I could say this is an amazing activity, you'd love that, and showing a very sad face, and you could have the system saying that there is a problem here. And they're also working with this kind of virtual agents which are looking on their phones while the person is making the pitch, because the pitch is not great enough, and being able to adjust what I'm currently discussing on that.
Yeah, like you can base your training, or sorry, the avatars will set up different situations for you so that you can learn from them.
So another one, Luis, you told me more about a document management part, right?
This is Bluebolt. It's another very different use of text analytics in this case. They are using it in conjunction with Azure Search. So they have a lot of documents, and they want to provide a very nice search experience and identify what are the key topics or the key phrases rather that are mentioned in each of the pieces of text. So they run the text analytics API through each of these documents to extract the key phrases, and then facet the search, or show groups of documents based on the key phrases that are most common. So different way of using text analytics.
So here we had the details about having a sentence and knowing if it's positive, negative, but everyone is talking about bots. So in some cases, how are we able to identify not only the sentiment but the intent of the sentence? How can we proceed that?
Yeah, that's correct. So we have a service called the Language Understanding Intelligence Service that allows us to see, or rather to classify text. In this slide here, I have a few examples of different sentences that someone could utter, right? So someone could say, when does flight AF32 arrive, or please book a flight to Orlando. These two sentences have a very different intention, right? The first one is to gather some arrival time. The last one that I mentioned is to actually book a flight, right? Now, I may express the same intent in many different ways. So instead of saying, when does flight AF32 arrive, I could ask, when is AF32 coming, right? And even though the exact characters and words that I'm using are different, the intent is the same. So we want to have a machine that is able to identify intent, and that is able to identify also those entities, like AF32 is a flight and so forth. So the way that we're doing that is through the Language Understanding Intelligence Service.
Can you show us?
Yes, absolutely. So, which is a service where you actually define a set of, oh, sorry, I'm not sharing my screen. Let me share it. Okay, I think we're, so in this case, you can create an application where you identify a set of terms which are interesting. These are entities and a set of intents or actions that you want to identify. This is a Hello World type of application that I created. It only has, it only has two intents: arrival information and location query. So it's as simple as it gets. So if I wanted to add an additional intent, I could. But in the interest of time, I will just go into one of them. So for arrival information, I provided a set of examples. It may be a little bit hard to see, but with these examples, you can tell or teach the system just like you teach a child. These are, like, I don't know, 40 or 50 different ways that someone can ask for this piece of information. And it's not that somebody will only be able to ask that information in that way. Someone could ask that information in a different way, but it has learned the patterns, right? So, for instance, I may want to provide another example. In this case, it's for arrival information. So I may say, when is, okay, sorry, let's say, when does X35 come to town? I don't know. And then it will, as you can see here, it classify that if it, without this example, there was only a 51% chance that it had been classified as arrival information. But now that I have trained it, I can even tag it and say X45 is actually the flight number. And so it has learned something new, right?
And so you can retrain it on top of that, right?
Absolutely. So you can retrain it and you can even test it, right? So I could say, like, how do I get to the cafeteria? So I'm actually now testing it, right? And it realized that if I say that, the probability that I'm asking for a location is 100% or 1. And it even was able to identify that the cafeteria is the place, so the entity. And this is because it learned from the previous patterns that I had provided the system. So now we could create an airport application that you could, type to, and it will be able to answer your questions.
And after one, I feel, and I think it's a yes as an answer, that this is one of the potential brain of bots, right?
Well, let's be careful, right? Because there are many aspects for a bot.
Yeah.
One of the aspects for a bot is to understand what you mean, right? But once you understand the intent, you still have to do something. Let's say in the case of a query for location, maybe the bot has to go and perhaps call another service to find the route between your existing location and that location, and then maybe display it in a map or something like that, and then display that back to the customer. So it's one of the, certainly a very important aspect of a bot. And that's a good question.
A question I always have is also, are you able to retrain language understanding after 1 day or 2 days when you have questions that the system would not have thought about?
Yes, absolutely. So it may be that just like we entered an example earlier, right, where we said, where we entered an expression and it gave us a 51%, that's a pretty low probability, right? So the good news is that the system always reports these probabilities, and you could kind of log these expressions and that have low probabilities, have a human actually verify that they are classified correctly or fix them, right? And that serves as feedback back into the bot so that you can retrain.
Retrain again and again.
Yes.
So thank you, Luis. And I like the idea of having a language processing, and you said the airport. In the airport, sometimes you type questions, but sometimes you would be trying to have the ability to ask questions in more natural ways, and in that case, it would not just typing things.
Yeah, you may have a suitcase and and a child that you have to carry across the airport, right? So it may be hard to do typing, right? And that's when speech can come in very handy. Yeah, and there are two aspects of it, right? So we have speech APIs. We have, well, the speech API allows you to simply pass the speech and it transcribes it into text, just like we saw on the PowerPoint example. That said, if you were in the airport, most likely there will be a lot of noises there, right? There will be someone speaking in the loudspeaker, your child is crying, and the terms that you are using are going to be very specific to the airport, perhaps, right? Yeah. So we could use service, the custom speech service, to actually provide better examples to the system to train it for your specific needs. So we're customizing a model just for you.
And so what do you need to use custom speech service versus a simple speech-to-text service?
Yeah, in a simple speech-to-text service, you don't need to do anything to use it, right? You just pass the audio that you want to score, that's the term we use in machine learning, and then you get the result, yeah, right? For a custom speech service, you actually have to provide data. So examples of utterances in that environment and the transcription of that.
So audio on one side and text on the other.
That is correct, right? So like input-output, such that the system can learn from these tuples, right? And identify patterns. It may identify, for instance, that a particular frequency is more important out of that audio, or even the type of terms that you use, right? So it will be able to increase the quality and precision of your model.
So we've got an example, right?
Of course.
Oh, I don't know that there was this example in an airport. Oh my God. So let me share my screen, and we're going to go through that. Just a second.
Yeah, I really like this example because it really drives this point home.
So I hope you can see my screen. Basically, we use sound in an airport. So exactly what you've seen earlier with language understanding intelligence service, we're going to put some audio, and we're going to have the system identifying with a usual benchmark system on the left doing simple speech-to-text.
Oh, it's your volume.
It's like a basic one. And on the right, you will see the transcription with the custom speech service. So I'm going to use it on my machine, so I hope you'll hear some sound.
Show me all flights from Pittsburgh to Boston, both direct and connecting, that depart Pittsburgh after 7 p.m.
So, we'll wait
a
second
for the screen to catch up.
A little bit lag, I'm using the Wi-Fi. I will try a second one. It's processing. Yeah, because I'm uploading my screen in the same time using my Wi-Fi. I will try one last time. Let me close the app and reopen it. Try again.
Show me all flights from Pittsburgh to Boston, both direct and connecting, that depart Pittsburgh after 7 p.m.
So we'll wait a little bit more for that one, Luis. It's sleeping a little bit. I will share it as soon as the output appears. It can happen. Let me go back to the presentation and explain just the use case here. So one of the examples of how using custom speech service has been used with one of our customers called Human Interact. It's a company who's been working on a video game called Starship Commander, which is a narrative story with virtual reality headsets. And during the game, basically you're flying in the space, and you're able to click and to ask for questions and talking about aliens. And like one of the aliens is called the Eknian. The point is that when you say Eknian to a computer, even with speech recognition, it wouldn't be able to catch that. So what the company did is basically training the system with speech capabilities on one side, using custom speech to do speech to text with the ability to extract the right words and the specific vocabulary. So in that case, it's not really noise cancellation because it's not a noisy environment. It's really about training with unique words which are related to the industry. And then, based on the text, then using language understanding intelligence service on top of that.
So, Gianpolo, just to go back to the demo that you had, I ran it just on my machine just while you were speaking, right? So we can see the difference between using the baseline speech service versus a custom speech service. You can see for what that gentleman said, right? In the first case, it said that instead of the part Pittsburgh, it said Martin Pittsburgh or something, right? Once we ran it through the language understanding service, the confidence that it was flight information was 94% for the custom speech service. If we didn't customize it, it was only 75%, right? And it was able to also identify the entities Boston, Pittsburgh, and the time which was after 7 p.m. So it certainly pays to customize your model.
So thank you, Luis. We're reaching nearly the end of the presentation. We're going in questions answer. I just wanted to tell you that we talked earlier about language understanding intelligence service. We're relying on having some cognitive services to work very well with bots. And the framework we're having in order to create the bot is the Microsoft Bot Framework. And through that, we've got a question, I think, about knowledge base, which happened while I was looking in Q&A while Luis was speaking, was how do you handle that as well? And we brought a service which is called Q&A Maker, which does that in a very, very easy way. How to start from scratch to build a service to have your bot to answering very basic questions, and to do that and to do all the capabilities of training on the go, like in 30 seconds. So the service is called Q&A Maker. It's one of the 30 cognitive services, and I will just show you how to do that in less than 1 minute. Like I will create FAQ bots, and it's going to ask me if I want to upload a Word document, or it could be even a PDF manual, and I can even use a URL of the site. So easy one, I went on the Microsoft FAQ with all these questions and answers. So I'm just copying the URL here, I'm pasting it there, and I'm just creating it.
Okay, so while you create it, so what is this doing right now? It's extracting the questions, right? It's crawling through the questions, identifying the answers, and creating these question-answers pairs.
Exactly.
So that it serves as training data for a bot, I guess.
And then you can directly test it, and here you are, the knowledge base which has been automatically created with the questions. The point is that I've got no clue about the questions. How do I find my product key? If I write, where is my product key? I put the question, and I've got then the details about what is the product key. Maybe it's not the right one, maybe this answer is the right one, or maybe that one is the answer. And I can select the most appropriate answer. I can even add alternate question like, tell me more about the product key. And I can train it, save it again, like in a couple of seconds, and I can decide on the go to publish it. I click, I wait 1, 2, 3, and it's done. I've got now a service I can use for one of the brains of the bot. I can use the key created, and in less than 1 minute I was able to evolve from a document to a knowledge base created to have the service for the bots.
Okay, so given that we ran out of time, we talked about a platform where you can create any kind of machine learning models. We talked about a set of services that are available for developers today that are very easy to consume, but very powerful, right? And we also talked about solutions and resources that we have for customers that want to create, large architectures, and that they can customize them through our partner ecosystem as well. Thank you so much for joining us. It has been a pleasure presenting to you.
So thank you so much, Gianpolo and Luis. That was a very great information, lots of information to take in. We do have just a couple of minutes left. We can take some additional questions just in the Q&A box. We will try to wrap those up for you if you've entered any questions today. In addition, we would ask that you take a moment to answer the survey, which is on the bottom right-hand corner of your console. And that gives us some information about what you enjoyed today, what you'd like to learn more about today related to the topic, as well as just giving us some feedback on how you felt today's webinar worked for you. So please take a moment to do that, and we would like to thank you again for attending today's webinar. We will try to get those all of those questions and answers wrapped up before we end. Thank you so much.